I'd like you to consider 3 reasons to call your sexual harassment policy something other than sexual harassment policy. Number 1, we want to be sure that our policy is addressing forms of harassment other than harassment based on gender. So race, age, disability, religion, any status that's protected by law. And maybe you would have that in a separate policy. I generally prefer to have it all in one policy because I think the principles are the same, really, as far as a company addressing them. But we want to make sure we are addressing those other forms of harassment. Number 2, we want to address conduct that may not rise to the level of unlawful harassment. Sexual harassment, under the severe and pervasive standard that the United States Supreme Court has set forward, can actually be a pretty high bar to constitute unlawful sexual harassment. That may change over time here as the great attention that is being paid to sexual harassment these days. But right now it's a high standard. We don't want to keep employees from reporting smaller forms of misconduct that we want to know about so we can address problems as an employer at their earliest stage. And we don't want employees who are knowledgeable about the law thinking, well, I don't think this rises to the level of sexual harassment. I probably shouldn't report it yet. As far as I'm concerned, we want information as soon as it may raise a concern so we can address it at the lowest possible level. Number 3, it may matter in defending a case against the company in the future. If our policy just prohibits sexual harassment and we find somebody violates that policy, it may make it more difficult for your lawyers to say, listen, the company did all the right things in response to this, and in any event, it doesn't rise to the level of unlawful sexual harassment. It doesn't change our commitment as an employer to addressing inappropriate conduct, but I think it just maximizes our options in defending potential future litigation. So what should we call it? I like something like sexual harassment and inappropriate workplace conduct policy. Because sexual harassment is the big issue, I do think it's important to have that language in there. We certainly don't want to be in a position where somebody in the future claims, well, I didn't know this policy applied to sexual harassment. It wasn't called that. So that's where I go with. It's very company by company. Each company may have its own considerations, but these are at least things I want you to be thinking about as you name your policy.